Hey College Success, this is your video for week 8, which runs from October 19th through the 23rd. Please take note that the 23rd is a Friday. Our class ends on a Friday because we're our first 8-week class session. So just keep that in mind. It's on the syllabus and it's in your announcements and on your week 8 folder. So this also means that this is your last video and hopefully you are motivated and excited to wrap this class up and any other first 8-week session courses you may have. So let's get right into it. So your week 1 was reopened a couple weeks ago. I did see a couple of you took advantage. Week 2 is reopening at the end of week 7. So some of you hopefully will be taking advantage of that. And then week 3 will be opening up for you to look at and make up some points at the beginning of week 8. So please make sure you're taking advantage of those opportunities if you need to do so because you've missed points beginning of the semester. So we are going to scroll down to our week 8 folder. We are in chapter 7. Again, this is our very last chapter, and you'll notice in a couple places, it reminds you that we are done on a Friday. So this semester for the first 8-week session, we are done on Friday, October 23rd, which means that's when all of this, including your final project, will be due. So you can see here's our list of assignments. We're going to go ahead and get into our materials folder. I want to take a look at our actual content for Chapter 7 first. So Chapter 7, it kind of aligns with what we're talking about now, where we're finishing, in our case, our semester. Some of you may still have some 16-week courses, to complete. But we're going to talk about staying on track and celebrating success. So the first part of that is reflecting on progress. We've talked about setting goals, and a big part of that is reflecting and adjusting. Well, reflecting on progress is right on track with what we've previously discussed. They have this concept called self-regulation, which ties back to this goal setting. What is your goal? How are you going to achieve that goal? What kind of things you're going to do? And then how are you doing? So the goal setting doesn't start at the beginning of the semester and then at the end of the semester you look back and say, oh, how'd it go? It's a process that you should be reflecting on throughout the entire length of your goal. So you set your goal at the beginning of the semester, and then a week or two in, what kind of strategies am I using? How is it going? Do I need to adjust my goal? And then you keep going through that process, because the more you reflect and adjust, the more likely it is you're going to meet that goal. You can also use different kinds of feedback whenever you are trying to check to see how your goal is going. Cognitive feedback is while you are in the process. So maybe you are using flashcards, you're practicing, you're studying with other people, and you're thinking as you go, do I understand this? If I don't, what's causing the confusion? How can I fix it? So it's during that process. Outcome is then what it sounds like. It's after you've already completed the paper, the test, the quiz, whatever it might be. What kind of feedback did you get? What was your grade? Because it's important to reflect after you're done, not only because maybe you have another test in a couple weeks over similar material, but just for the learning process in general. What did you learn? How could you do better moving forward? How can you improve on just the content or the test process? So lots of ways that you can still learn even after you've received your grade back. Self-assessments, we often see, and research will support that when students are overconfident, they have these illusions of confidence, they actually end up doing more poorly because they think that, oh, I know this material, so I don't have to study as much, and they stop studying too soon, and then they actually end up doing more poorly than if they would have just kind of kept pace with the studying. So it's important to be honest with yourself with your self-assessments when you kind of take stock of how you understand something, how it's going, so that you can do the best possible. This chapter also talks about attribution theory, the role of making mistakes, because that's how we learn. We don't necessarily want to make a lot of mistakes, but making mistakes is part of the learning process. And so attribution theory says, how do we give credit or attribute our successes and failures? Do we recognize that we can control our success and failures? And so the most productive way to view mistakes is as a learning process. That, okay, I made this mistake, but how can I learn from it? How can I grow from it? So the most productive way to view a mistake then is that it's internal. Something within you caused the success or failure. Meaning, you know what, I did not study enough, or I just didn't put enough time into this, or I just didn't have enough motivation. Or on the flip side, maybe you did all those things and that caused you success. So you had that control. Therefore, you have the power to change it. So if you kind of take ownership of it, that means that you have the power to change it, versus if you've ever known someone who will always blame other people. Well, I couldn't study because my boss or my parents or whoever it might be. Well, then they're kind of powerless in the situation if they feel like everyone else is to blame. There's nothing they can do to change their success or failure. So these are the most productive ways to view those mistakes. So staying motivated, week 8 is usually the week of the semester for my 16-week classes anyway, where they start to kind of see a delay in motivation. They're not quite as motivated. So it's important to figure out how and why are you motivated. And so there are different theories that are associated with motivation. The first one is behavioral motivators. We are motivated by rewards, which a lot of us are. And so a reward could be simply like a grade. That's a reward. We want a good grade, so we work hard. Getting a job, getting a promotion. Sometimes we're motivated to avoid a consequence. We don't want to fail, so we work hard. We don't want to get fired. So this is pretty natural, a behavioral motivator. And I would say to some degree, all of us are motivated by a reward at some point or other, big or small. Another theory is cognitive motivators. Our thinking motivates us. So if you have negative or unproductive thoughts, it's important to challenge those. So how can you do that? Well, as soon as you have one of those thoughts, stop and say, okay, wait a minute. Why am I feeling this way? And then really examine why you're feeling like a negative or unproductive or unrealistic way, to challenge it, and then try to change it to be more positive. So for instance, maybe math is not your thing, and so you might say, I hate math, I'm no good at it. Well, think about it, like, why? Did you have a teacher? Did you have an experience? Did you have something that happened with you as associated with math? And then try to turn it into a little bit more positive. All right, math isn't my favorite, but if I try, I could probably improve. So you're kind of just changing your thinking, and that's part of that cognitive motivation. And part of that is also just to kind of increase your self-efficacy, take risks, ask for help, know that you're going to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and reflect on those. So that's the other theory so far. We've talked about cognitive theory. The next is humanistic. Humanistic means that, what do you need to be successful? And this is where, and this might look familiar, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This humanistic theory says that before we can be productive and reach our goals and self-actualize, we have to have these basic things met first. Our physiological needs. We need to be fed, we need to sleep, we need to have water, we need to have shelter. Then we need to feel safe. And that could mean physical safety, but can also mean like emotional safety. Can mean your safety. Do you feel like you are okay in the classroom? Do you feel like you can be yourself, which kind of leads into belonging? Do you feel like you belong in your setting? And then can work on your esteem to self-actualization. So this is basically saying before we can meet our goals, these basic things have to be met first. And that's why it's humanistic. The last one is social motivator. This is a theory that the people that we surround ourselves with are the people who can either support or maybe be an obstacle to our success. So that's why it's important to be around positive people and making sure that you have a network of people that are going to help you, motivate you. And sometimes it actually works the opposite way. You might see someone and be like, oh, I don't want to end up like them. So in a way, you are working to avoid becoming like someone else in your social circle. So that's a social motivator. So hopefully you can see your behavioral, cognitive, humanistic, or social. Maybe you can see yourself in one of those or maybe multiple of those. And this is actually going to be a question on your quiz you'll see here in a little bit. All right, the next part of the chapter talks about managing stress, which I think is appropriate, especially now during COVID. I think maybe our stress levels are higher than ever. So the chapter talks about some stress management techniques, some of which are common sense, but we don't always necessarily put them into practice, whether it's time or energy. But, sleep, eating, and exercise, the basics of stress management. Being mindful, really just being in the moment and being aware of what's going on currently, because if you're constantly thinking about something in the past or the future, you're not paying attention to what's happening in front of you, and so that can stress you out a little bit. So to be mindful, you want to try to remove distractions, do some deep breathing. We don't breathe enough, and I know that sounds funny because we literally breathe all the time, but I mean like deep breaths. We need to really practice and focus on our breathing sometimes. Just take a deep breath every once in a while to kind of collect your thoughts, and that helps you become more mindful. Pay attention to your body, stretch. There's something called progressive muscle relaxation. That's a really nice series of really tensing and then releasing muscles all the way from your toes up to your eyebrows, and it really helps your body relax. So being mindful is a way to kind of eliminate stress. And then also just making sure that you're not partaking in unhealthy behaviors that are going to actually ultimately increase your stress. So the next part of our chapter talks about being resilient. So whenever there's something that happens, and resilience is, it says, like bouncing back after a traumatic or tragic event. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be that extreme. It can be you failed a test. Well, are you going to just give up, or are you going to keep working? So if you're resilient, you're going to keep working. You're going to try to increase, your study time. You're going to try to improve your grade. And then grit is kind of this long-term basis. So showing resilience on a long-term scale. Perseverance kind of ties in right with that, making sure that you don't give up even when you find out like, oh my gosh, this is going to take more time or more energy or effort than I thought. You keep persevering. There is, Carol Dweck is a researcher that kind of brought this idea to light, the growth mindset, saying that you want to have a growth versus fixed mindset, meaning, I'll go back to that math example. Thinking that you're bad at math and you'll never improve is a fixed mindset. Well, our thoughts really do kind of control how we behave. So if we think we're never going to improve in math, we're not going to, because we have a fixed mindset. However, if we think, okay, I'm not great at math, but if I practice, if I study, if I get the help, I can improve. That's more of a growth mindset. And so your chapter will talk about Dweck's attribution and growth versus fixed mindset as well. And then as well as the role of positive thinking and trying to be more optimistic as you go through your academic and professional careers. And then having a strong support system, whether it's peers, whether it's a network of teachers on campus, whatever it might look like, having that strong support is really important. And you may not have the same support system for your athletics as you do for your academics, and that's okay. You can't always rely on the same person or group of people to support you in every area of your life, which is why it's important to have a strong support system specifically for academic reasons. And so that's where campus resources will come in. Make sure you're aware of all these resources, and that's one of the goals throughout the semester, where I introduced to you different offices on campus so that you would know who you could reach out to whenever you do need extra support in whatever area it might be. And then finally, this is going to be the basis of your discussion this week, celebrating success. Taking time to really okay, I did it. If you celebrate your success, you're sharing your story, you're improving your motivation, you improve your overall well-being and happiness. It's nice to give yourself a pat on the back every once in a while. So it's important to share that success. All right, so that is chapter 7. And as usual, I encourage you to get into the chapter and do a little bit more digging on certain concepts or materials. So we're going to go ahead and look at what your assignments are now. Okay, so chapter 7 discussion. Here's what we just ended in the PowerPoint. Post a successful experience you've had this semester and why. So you are going to share your success. So it could be something as simple as, you know what, you logged in every few days and you did all your work. That's successful. Maybe you had a GPA goal and you're on track to meet that goal. Maybe you're doing well in attendance in other classes. So post a successful experience. If you need to pull in something more personal, like you were trying to do a work and school balance, you can talk about that. So try to have like an academic twist to it if you can, so that you can kind of celebrate and share that success. And then go ahead and respond to classmates. So your original response for week 8 attendance is due Wednesday the 21st, and then you're going to respond to 2 classmates by Friday. Okay, again, everything is wrapping up Friday. All right, here's our next assignment, success or failure. So you're going to open this up and you're going to see a list of 10, and this is going to really show me who has been watching the videos. So what you're going to do is you're not going to Google these answers. You're going to pull up, and you can just even click in here and write the submission right here. That's fine. your answers right there. If you want to do it in a Word document, that's okay too, but do not Google. You're not going to get points taken off if you get a wrong answer. You're going to get full credit just for trying. And so this is kind of showing people who eventually were considered to be very successful in their field, how they actually failed first. So it's kind of going along those lines of, making mistakes and learning from them. So your job is to read each statement and then just try to guess who they're talking about. Again, if you Google, I will clearly know because some of these are a little tricky. So make sure that you just kind of take a guess. If I had you in class, this would be like a group assignment and kind of like a little game to see who could come up with the most correct answers. So online, I'm encouraging you to avoid looking these up and just take a stab at it. Just see how many you can figure out. I'll give you the right answers when I grade it. Again, you will not get anything marked off for wrong. You're going to get full credit just for doing that. So it's just a kind of a fun little look at these famous, successful people in their fields who ultimately did a lot of failing first and learned from it. So that is the Who's That Failure assignment. Then you have your Chapter 7 quiz, your very last quiz of the semester, of our class anyway. So again, make sure you're answering in 2 to 5 complete sentences. You'll see, question 3 is a 2-part question, so make sure that you answer both parts of that. Question 6 kind of sets up a little scenario. Question 10 goes back to those theories of behavior. So remember what motivational theory. So that goes back to the PowerPoint here or inside your book where it talked about, how are we motivated? Are you motivated by behavioral, cognitive, humanistic, or social? So that's what you'll address in that last question there. So make sure that you respond to all those questions, and that is due also by Friday. So again, all assignments due by Friday. The last thing in your week 8 is counseling support services. This is the time of the semester where you can be a little stressed. So you'll see I have 2 things in here. The first of which is a PowerPoint, and it's actually a really quick PowerPoint. I think it's only like 5 slides. And you can look at them, or if you want, when you play the PowerPoint, our counselor does a little talking. You can see how long. They're not terribly long at all, but it goes through some of the resources and it talks to you about the resources, or in addition, you can click on the link here and it's going to take you to counseling support services. And here is a bunch of resources again that we have on our campus, what counseling services does, specific services or tools or resources over there, hotlines, lots of information here, lots of things that they can do, as well as some contact information. So for your takeaway, discuss how you or someone you know could benefit from this resource on campus. Again, you don't have to get personal. You don't have to give a reason why. You can just talk in general, what is something that maybe you or someone you know could benefit from in regards to what they offer. Again, please do not just list all the services they offer. I can look at the website too. You're going to kind of pick and reflect on what is most helpful for you. All right, so reflection here, review. In this chapter, you are completing your Celebrating Success by Wednesday the 21st. Post your original response for week 8 attendance. Respond to 2 classmates by Friday. You're going to do that Who's That Failure? Do not Google. Who's That Failure? Chapter 7 quiz and your resource reflection also by Friday. Okay. Your last thing is your final project. Final project. If you scroll to the final project video folder, you can see again there's a copy of your final project directions. I'm going to recommend that before you submit your final project, you take one last look through the directions as well as the rubric to make sure that you have hit on everything you need to hit, that you're going to get as many points as possible. I also recommend, if you need to, kind of reviewing steps 1 and 2, 3 and 4, step 5, and then there's a review right there. When you are completely confident in your project, there's the Dropbox right there within that folder. You'll drop it. Again, you have until Friday, the 23rd, to submit that. If you want to send it to me before to take a look and give you some feedback, you can. I would need you to send it to me no later than Thursday. If you send it to me Friday morning, I cannot guarantee that I'm going to have a chance to look at it to give you feedback. So you can send me your final project for feedback via email, or you can get into course messages and send it that way and just say, hey, can you give me feedback on this, so I don't think you're just submitting it through a different way. All right, so that is it. That is your last video. If you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. I hope that you guys have had a really good semester. I've appreciated your hard work. I know that an 8-week course in general is never easy in terms of its pacing and the amount of work that's to be done, but in the midst of COVID, I'm sure it was even more maybe stressful in some cases. So if you need anything though this semester or moving forward, please feel free to reach out and have a great rest of the fall semester.